Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Montesquieu Forum. Our speaker today, here at the end of the semester, for many brave souls, is Marina Marren. Marina graduated from Roosevelt University with a BS degree in hospitality management in 2006, having come to America at age 14, if I remember correctly.
18.
2018.
I was 18.
You were 18?
We don't have to bicker about details, but I think I was 18 if memory serves.
Well, she would probably know much better than I. And I had the very good fortune of having Marina show up in my liberal studies class, both for the first semester and the second semester of her freshman year. And after a short period of time, I began to badger her about the prospects of changing her major from hospitality management to philosophy. She didn't listen to me. Not a surprise, it's a frequent occurrence. And concluded her degree in hospitality management, but felt something gnawing at her, a slightly different calling. And that led her to start sitting in on more philosophy classes here at Roosevelt and sitting in on some graduate classes at DePaul University. After all, she decided she wanted to go for a master's in philosophy and took some classes at Loyola University and then her doctorate, and she was accepted at Boston College. She is on the cusp of finishing her studies. On May 5th, she will be defending her doctoral dissertation on the subject of a philosophical study of tyranny in Plato, Sophocles, and Aristophanes. During her time at Boston College, she has done a fair amount of teaching, and in the academic years 2013 and 14, and 2015 and 16, she won a Teaching Excellence Award amongst graduate fellows there, and the evidence for that, I think, will be very clear today. Today, she's really going to be talking about sightseeing, but the official title for the talk is From Waitressing at the Trump Hotel to Graduate School in Philosophy from Estonia. You did come from Estonia.
That is the case.
Good. To America. Please join me in welcoming Marina Marren.
Thank you, Stuart, for this beautifully detailed introduction. I'm not sure if I should be speaking. It will be an expanded version of more or less the same. However, thank you. So as Stuart did say, I graduated from Roosevelt University in December of 2006, indeed, with a degree in hospitality and tourism management and a certificate in events and exhibit planning. Today, I am a doctoral candidate at Boston College, Philosophy Department. My dissertation defense is set, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. Promise you will think of me on the 5th, on the morning of the 5th. I can use all the encouragement we can get, as well as about those whose lives were lost in the French-Mexican War of 1862. General Zaragoza's victory over the French army was a miracle. So is the fact that my much too lengthy dissertation project is finally finished. I hope for a bloodless defense. To the things themselves. What does a PhD in philosophy have to do with an undergraduate degree in hospitality and tourism management from Roosevelt University? Well, everything. A mentor and a friend of many years, Professor Stuart Werner, will tell you, as he repeatedly told me, that theory, which is intimately related to philosophy, comes from the ancient Greek word theoria. The funny, and in my case, the great thing is that theorein, in its original sense, means to contemplate, to spectate, but it also means to see foreign sights. Philosophy from the start is a theoretical investigation just as much as it is an exercise in sightseeing. My experience as an immigrant attests to this theoretical insight. As far as I'm concerned, you must travel. You have to travel, that is if you want to philosophize. Here's why, I think. So you can take this imperative to travel in two directions. One of them can mean metaphorical travel. One of them would be to travel literally. So you can travel by visiting different countries and seeing foreign ways of doing things. While you do that, by the way, you become somewhat of a foreigner to yourself, to your own background and presuppositions, and that, becoming foreign to yourself, is essential for philosophical thinking. Alternatively, you can think of reading as a mode of travel and sightseeing. The idea is not mine, as Socrates would say. This notion of reading as a mode of travel through space and through time, mind you, is Descartes. You can open his Discourse and Method, and read the introduction, and you will see exactly what this kind of travel means and what it entails. If you're gearing up for more literal and less literary kind of travels, maybe you're thinking of a semester abroad, or simply of going abroad, or traveling the wonderful expanses of the United States. I know this will sound counterintuitive, but set aside the colorful travel guidebooks, despite the fact having majored in hospitality and tourism management, I encourage that. And the reason being that maybe have one travel guide that is really good and place specific, but the glamour shots in travel magazines, I would definitely set that aside. My former student writes plentiful emails to me. She has written several. We have an exchange going on over several years now. And she writes, social media certainly paints traveling as constant moments of magic, and that is definitely not the case. My student's name is Grace. Grace is a mountain climber, an avid camper, as well as a political science and an environmental science major. Grace minored in Arabic language. In the past few years, Grace traveled the world, so she knows what she's talking about when she says that travel is not about glorious glamour shots in travel magazines. There are wonderful, time-tested books about travel. Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift, The Mysterious Stranger and Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, Don Quixote by Cervantes, Montesquieu's Persian Letters, and when Stuart didn't see this title on my famous travel books list, he freaked out. So it's included now. Thank you. I don't know how I forgot. You know, what is closest to you usually is furthest. I have forgotten my bad. The Arabian Nights are also about all sorts of wondrous travels and wanderings. Herodotus' histories, Shakespeare's Adventures of Pericles, a strange play, but also about travels. All of these are books that prepare your mind to explore the world. It is an imaginative and a thoughtful exploration. My own literary adventures began early and took a shape of an unwavering love for Russian literature and Estonian mythology. Although, let me tell you, when my family moved to the US and I began taking English language and literature classes at Roosevelt, my penchant for Tolstoy-style, half-a-page-long sentences written in English, that did me no good whatsoever. As a matter of fact, all of the 3 B grades that I've gotten at Roosevelt University, the rest, implication being our A's, come from English, literature, and philosophy classes. But what of it? Look, I took my GREs twice, okay? By the way, those of you who may be thinking of going to graduate school, you can start feeling queasy now, for who knows, the dreaded GREs. Hey, well, having finished a dissertation in philosophy, I'm a pro at English prose, but that's now. How about that for swimming against the current, or going against the grain, or winning against all odds? Yeah. Now I'm full of idiomatic language, now I'm unstoppable. Which brings me to my next point. If you work hard on something, and the world still keeps pushing back at you, then you need to buckle down and keep working. Don't let anyone tell you what you can and cannot do. As a matter of fact, if you know that you're in the right field, that what you're doing is your passion and your lifeline, then there is nothing and no one whose criticism should disparage you from pursuing what you love. There is, of course, such a thing as being too stubborn. However, if you're sure that, say, theater is your thing, but you keep getting pushed back on account of your shyness, Give yourself some room to breathe and reflect. Develop your persona. Do you know Woody Allen? I'm looking specifically here. You know The Match Point, The Midnight in Paris, or the less recognizable titles in the sense that your parents would recognize them really quickly. Manhattan, The Curse of the Jade Scorpion, The Small Time Crooks. In these last three films I named, Woody acts himself. He also puts on a pretty mean act in these, okay? But did you know that there was a time when Woody Allen hated being in front of audiences, doing any public engagements or speaking in front of people? Now he's a celebrated actor. And the story goes that he got so nervous during one of his stand-up comedy acts back in the 1960s that he started twisting a mic cord around his neck in front of people. He was doing that, okay? The audience got really freaked out by that. People were worried. They thought that maybe he went mental, a little crazy. Maybe something was going wrong, something dreadful was going to happen. I mean, the guy in front of me. But nothing dreadful happened. I mean, probably just vomited his guts out after that, and then he got over it. And then Woody Allen did it again and again, and eventually got over his stage fright. So he is now one of the most celebrated actors and directors of our time. But where would Woody be if he let himself be stopped by a streak of introversion? I mean, who cares for an actor, right? Why would that matter to be an introvert? I went into such detail on Woody Allen's former fear of public speaking for two reasons. One, to drive home this idea that you need to believe in yourself and stick with people who believe in you. Let the naysayers and the critics do their job. Let them give you free advice on where and how to improve, and then let them be quiet, you know? The second reason why I zeroed in on Woody's stage fright is because I can relate. My first teaching experience was a marvelous train wreck. I was stiff, my students were stiff, I was nervous. They picked up on my fear, but they didn't know why I was afraid, so they got scared. It was an exercise in anxiety. Freud would have been proud, okay? We were getting our feet wet in experiencing and surviving anxiety. Well, I mean, I was drenched head to toe. Maybe my students just got their feet wet. Every time, every class, I felt like I just ran a marathon. It was so strange. That lasted for about half a semester. I mean, how long can one survive that, right? But then, with my students' help, I began seeing myself through their eyes, through their own eyes, and asking for their suggestions. In fact, I went to them, and this thing got turned around. So my best Boston College student friends are from that first year of teaching. I mentioned Grace, we keep up. Nothing bonds like overcoming fear. Fear of failure, fear of not fitting in, fear of not knowing what to do. If you're ever feeling that kind of fear, seek out fellow classmates. There's a good chance that they too are afraid. This way you can be afraid together. What I mean is that this way you can figure out how to solve the problem, and you will make great friends. This is experience talking. You know when else I felt intense fear? That was when I left Los Angeles after my family and I moved to the United States. So I lived in LA for all of 3 months, and then I looked around, I noticed where I was, and I decided I need to run. Just kidding. No, it was partially a joke, okay? Good jokes are usually partially true. Then I packed, so I moved to Chicago. At the time, I knew one person in Chicago, and thank God Chicago is a friendly city. So let me back up a little. I left my home country, Estonia, which has a burgeoning population of 1.5 million people, okay? At a tender age of 18. Then Los Angeles, a population of 3.8 million people. That is practically 2 Estonias and a quarter. Then I took it down a notch and moved to Chicago, 2.7 million, fine. No big deal, I can live with this right now. No, I couldn't, this is a joke. I was so scared, I used to seek out scary situations to forget how scared I was. To live in the sea of light style metropolis where I was quite alone. I used to go to skydive Chicago. I would drop myself out of perfectly fine working airplanes just to experience this fear, to realize that there are things that are scarier in life than being alone in a big city. Maybe Rilke can relate. No, but you're fearless though. That's the difference, I guess. There we go. So when I left the little tiny quaint homeland of Estonia, it really is beautiful but small, for wonderful America. There's lots of fear going on, yeah, but I mean, why my parents didn't come by from Los Angeles, didn't pick me up, didn't think it would be a good idea, come and gather me, hunt me down, I don't know. No idea. I guess maybe fear was talking in them as well. No. But here's another advice from experienced traveler. When you are alone, don't stay so for long. Be open to people with necessary precautions, of course, and people will reach out to you. Just like my first year of teaching, the best friends, like Professor Warner, whom I made in America, I made in the first few years of my stay here in Chicago, like for Luca. These are wonderful, life-changing, and life-formative friendships. So Aristotle says that a friend is another self, and that best friendships are not solely about utility and not solely about benefits. Best friendships are not like that. Aristotle says pleasure, but he means benefits, as in friends with benefits, so no, this is not a best friendship. Best friendships are for the sake of another person. They're for the sake of your friend. It is a great gift to be with people who care about you. It is a great gift to be able to care for another human being in this way. I think that this kind of care is at the core of what it means to be human. Loneliness is not all it is talked up to be. There is one guy who's dead now. His name is Andrei Tarkovsky. He would disagree with me on this point of not dwelling in loneliness, not being alone. He says that today, of course, his today is over 40 years ago. However, the point I think is still valid. He says something along the lines of, young people today don't know how to be alone. They have forgotten how to be fine with being by themselves, being reflective, being alone. Tarkovsky also says that he's worried that we spend too much time in busy and often angrily nitpicky chatter about trivial events in life. How did Tarkovsky, back in 1970s, foresee Facebook, Twitter, and so on? I have no idea. That gives you an impression of kind of angry chatter he is referring to. However, he will tell you to learn to appreciate solitude. Through such reflection, when we are alone with ourselves and are at peace with ourselves, we grow. I think he's right, actually, so I will leave you with this apparent paradox. I will leave it up to you to resolve that on the one hand, it's at the core of what it means to be human, to have friends for whom we care, not specifically because they have something to offer for us, but because it's a gift, and a gift giving, and a friend is another self. And on the other hand, to be human also means to be able to be alone and be at peace and be reflective in this way. So how to bring these two together, perhaps you can tell me. I haven't exactly figured that out. Reflecting now while addressing you on my academic training, on my travels, and my experiences at Four Seasons, and yes, at the He Who Should Not Be Named Hotel. So I don't need to name that, actually, great. I wonder, what would have come of me if my parents did not get this wild idea into their heads to travel far, very, very far? But that is my way. You do not have to travel very far. You're already here at Roosevelt University, an academic institution which avails you of access to excellent resources. Whatever your current major, or whatever you're thinking to major in, try your absolute, darnedest best. Give your studies your hardest effort. I worked while I was an undergraduate at Roosevelt University, so I know what kind of expense an attempt to do really well academically while supporting yourself comes. So that is an effort. However, if you do give your studies the absolute best, and you apply for the honors program, and you seek out funding sources, and you work as hard as you can, and most of all, if you take philosophy, very good things will come of it. It simply is the case. Make philosophy your minor, or better still, make it your major. I have even a better idea, full of them today somehow. Double major in philosophy. This discipline of philosophy opens your mind. It teaches you to think in ways that are valuable applicable, and powerfully useful, whatever field you end up choosing as your professional career. Personally, the kind of reflective capacity with which philosophical training invests you opens you up to the fullness of life, to the richness and depth of experience, and to the undeniably miraculous nature of our shared time here on Earth. While you have time at Roosevelt University, while you're here, and this is my sincere advice, make the absolute most of it. My passion was, and to a large extent still is, hospitality. I understand it as a critical element of peace. Think about it. What would diplomacy be without hospitality? Or without a hospitable attitude toward one another? What would the international relations look like? International relations. If all of us were squarely and always hostile, right? If we went into a room to work out an agreement with an attitude predisposed toward one another, not in a hospitable way, but quite differently. Not friends, but enemies. After all, what would this great city, Chicago, look like? Or what will it look like, God forbid, if animosity wins over hospitality? Hospitality is important. I think I'm making the point. However, to me, at the time that I was an undergraduate student here at Roosevelt, it was most important that I find myself and that I learn to remain true to myself. Once I realized, after several years, as an employee at the Four Seasons Hotel in Chicago, that I had to think about hospitality academically and not only offer it by way of occupation, two things happened to me. I became very, very happy, but I also hit a wall of despair at the same time. So remember that scene from Harry Potter where Harry and Ron are sitting down in the augury class, I believe. So they're trying to read each other's cups, leaves on the bottom of the cup. And so Ron is interpreting Harry's leaves, and Ron says something like, "Oh, Harry, it looks like you'll suffer, but you'll be happy about it." It's a really strange scene, but it captures my existential comportment at the time, and I figured out that I need to move into academe from working in hospitality. It is pretty perfectly. Okay, so thank goodness Stuart was there to guide me back in 2007. Cherish your friendships, ask for advice, and make the best out of the advice you get. Roosevelt has amazing resources. Make sure you take advantage of them. With Stuart's patient and persistent guidance, I realized that, oh my God, I'm in Chicago. So what? I don't have a degree in philosophy. I have Stuart. Well, I mean, that, but also I have access to universities, as Stuart was saying, like DePaul, Loyola, University of Chicago. So I had to bring myself up to speed. I audited graduate courses with some tears. Finally, I got accepted at Loyola with many more tears. Finally, a couple of years down the road, the offer from Boston College came in. I have no idea. I don't want to know how much tears it will take before I get an academic position for me and for my husband that is crying. That being set aside, not all things in life are up to us. Chance, fate, situation, these are very real things. You learn about them while you study philosophy, and you learn to be cool with them. That is, with the fact that you can't overpower the world and provide for all of the contingencies. However, you can, while being open to things as they may come, prepare yourself to the best of your ability. You can even set up the situation just so, to some extent, in your favor. How to do that? Study hard. Study very, very hard. Take philosophy. Once you have taken it, you'll see what I mean. It's like magic, but better, because magic sometimes backfires, sometimes it just dissipates by the morning. However, philosophy, unless you're planning on some kind of a freak accident, like turning into partially a cat and partially human, will not do that to you. You will get there where you're planning on going. Philosophy will help you turn yourself into the best chemist, the best physicist, the best teacher or social worker, the best political science major, or the best literature expert in whatever tricky subfield. And why is the question? Well, because philosophical thinking is both foundational and groundbreaking. It is about understanding and being very well versed in the perennial questions of life, human and otherwise. Yet philosophy is also about teaching yourself how to be imaginative and innovative. It's like jazz, like rock and roll, like rap, like classics, but better. Exciting. So once you have figured out what it is that you're doing in life, and if you have not, definitely take philosophy, because it will help you figure out a few things. Once you know, do 2 things, or rather 3. First, excel in your chosen field. Second, double major or minor in philosophy. And third, take advantage of Roosevelt University, of Chicago, and of the United States academics. This third point takes a little bit longer to explain, and here's what I mean. Make colleagues and friends at Roosevelt, both among your fellow students and among faculty. Go to events and lectures at Roosevelt that relate to your interests, and every now and again, visit the ones that are completely off the wall for you, because it's really good to keep an open mind. Audit lectures and classes in your area of interest at the universities like DePaul, Northwestern, University of Chicago. Chicago is so rich with these wonderful institutions. Build friendships there. Apply for grants, apply for scholarships, for summer workshops, preferably funded ones, through national academic and professional organizations in your field. There is one more, one last, one very important thing, the 4th one. Plato's dialogue Timaeus begins with this line, 1, 2, 3. Where is the 4th? There are many candidates for this 4th in the dialogue. For us today, the 4th thing is this: read. Read lots and read well. Learn how to read, reflectively and carefully. Reading is a nearly forgotten art, and I dare you to bring it back. Thank you.
I assume you can take your own questions and comments.
Yes, indeed. If after your very diligent introduction and my very diligent introduction, there are any more, but yeah, sure, of course. I'm happy to answer them.
With what you learned in philosophy, how did that help you during your transition to the United States?
So in terms of acclimation, right? Yeah, so this element of being able to enter into another person's perspective or look at things creatively. And look at things from, as I was referring at the beginning of the presentation, from a foreign point of view. This flexibility that philosophy avails you of, in fact, demands of you, to engage in thinking that is theoretically complex, but also best philosophical thinking nonetheless has strong purchase on life, right? So that coincidence of practical and theoretical that is quite demanding on the way that you think helps you to reposition your view of the world and view of yourself in it. And so to put it very simply, a lot of prejudices while you're studying philosophy drop away, or at least they're suspended. A number of our fears or predilections drop away or they're suspended, which is quite helpful when you're trying to acclimate to new, completely, really new ways of doing things. Estonia these days is not exactly that different in being, which is a home country where I come from Estonia, these days not so different from the Western world. And even at the time that it was a part of Soviet Union, it was always a window into the Western world, into Europe. However, it takes a while to realize that you even had a cultural shock. I think something like 12 months, a year had passed before it sunk in. And oh my goodness, I am in a very different environment. The humor is different. The way that things are done, I mean, the way that people talk. If you come to Estonia, I'm not sure if you've noticed that, but everything is very hushed and people talk quietly. And if you present yourself in a particular way, you're overbearing. So very basic ways, for which, again, philosophical thinking or engaging yourself in this reevaluation of how you see the world is very helpful in this manner.
So how did you find out about Roosevelt?
That was interesting. I guess I began reaching out to people early on when I came to Chicago. And so something like 7 months into my being in America, I realized earlier that I wouldn't be able to start my academic studies immediately that year, which was 2001. So I told myself I will take an academic year off. 2002 it will be. And I was looking at places like Harold Washington College for obvious reasons. But then I made an acquaintance. His name is Gregory Bush, and he recommended. We had several conversations. He recommended that I look at Roosevelt University because it is a semi-private institution. It offers scholarships. There's an honors program, and all of these things began to come together. And indeed, I applied and started taking classes in the honors program. Stuart was there, and it was a great choice. Yeah. So it was fortuitous to some extent, which is just reiterates this point that you've got to be open to people. I think it's part of success.
Can you talk about the scholarship you got from hospitality management?
There were many of them. So there's a scholarship that I've gotten from the hospitality department here at Roosevelt University, and I kept on receiving the same funding for the consecutive 4 years. There is a scholarship from the National Hotel Association. There are scholarships from National Restaurant Association. Long story short, I applied every year for something like 6 or 7 scholarships. And some of them would come through, and this was my way of putting myself through school. Because indeed, my parents never did come to find me, gather me, take me back to California. So I had to, figure out how to navigate and make my own way. And Roosevelt was extremely helpful in this way. Yeah. The hospitality, professors at the hospitality department was basically advised or suggested at the beginning of my academic studies which kinds of organizations it would be a good idea to look into. And I definitely took them up on their advice. Gonna run with it, yeah. Did you have a question? Yeah.
And so you studied for a number of years to go into hospitality management.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious about 2 things. One, did you kind of leave philosophy for a little bit and come back to it as you were embarking upon your career? And 2, I would love to hear more about the decision to say, I'm going to do something different.
That's right.
I've been doing all these years like this, I'm going to go back to what I found out that I love. And was that a hard decision? Did it come upon you all at once, slowly?
Thank you, yeah. I always read. That never stopped, and I kept auditing classes while I was working toward a hospitality degree, and Stuart never stopped harassing me about majoring in philosophy. So there was that insistence and encouragement, which is very important. I think teaching now, having students myself, I realized that encouragement and convincing a person, maybe not as forcefully as Stuart would, but nonetheless, supporting a talent, convincing an individual that he or she is capable is very important. And so I kept on reading. I remember nights I would be traveling home on the Blue Line or even Green Line from a long shift at Four Seasons restaurant or at the Trump, and I would have a copy of Being in Time open, and people would come up and, what are you reading? It's late at night. Slightly buzz people. Like, the world whirls. How about you? And so it was strange. It was topsy-turvy. And the interest was always there, in other words. That hitting the wall of despair, that was very hard indeed, when I realized that I have got to think about things, that Stuart was right, that there is this passion and it is a lifeline, and perhaps I would be successful in the world of hospitality, but would that be a life of fulfillment, spiritual fulfillment, also happiness and success? That the longer I stayed, the starker was the realization that I have to at least try to redirect this ship of state, to turn things around. And it took some time. So for 2 years, I was, as I referred to it, I was bringing myself up to speed. I was auditing courses. I was making friends and seeking out colleagues at DePaul University, eventually Loyola. It wasn't easy, but it was very clear to me that I have to pursue this because we only live once, and indeed the shared time on earth is precious. And unless I try, how can I continue being honest with myself? I mean, I'm putting it in very dramatic language, but it really was a passion. Something was calling very, very starkly, because it wasn't an easy change. I mean, I remember thinking when the applications were not, when the responses, positive responses were not coming in, after I applied for master's programs, I remember waiting and thinking, gosh, am I going to have to do a second bachelor's degree? How am I going to do this? And eventually Loyola offer came in. And so it was a master's program, no scholarships there. So I was working at the Trump while doing working toward a master's at Loyola. And then 2 years down the road, several offers came in. One of them was from Boston College, and that was clear. That's where I wanted to be. It was exciting. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a great question.
This is a little bit more specific, but your dissertation's on Plato.
Right.
So
You have an accent too, do you?
I grew up speaking Spanish.
Okay, there we go.
What is it do you not like about Plato?
You're full of wonderful questions. Wait, remind me of your name again?
Lucas.
Lucas. What is it that I don't like about Plato?
Yeah.
I don't know how to exactly answer that. One thing that I could have said would be something like, look, despite of what the field of interpretation will tell you, the tradition of interpretation will tell you, and most commentators now will tell you, in spite of all of that, because something that they would tell you would be, oh, we know exactly what Plato is saying, or at least we can get to it. I think that's a misrepresentation of Plato's dialogues and of his work. So I could say something like, oh, I really don't like the fact that Plato never shows his face, that we actually do not know what he says. Because there's not a single dialogue where Plato says, in his own name, he never says, I, Plato, believe that this theory is true. There are always these dialogical layers. It's like reading a Shakespearean play. You can't say that a character is the same as the writer. Okay, so I could have said, in response to this question, I just hate it. I can't stand it. We need to know exactly what Plato is thinking. But as a matter of fact, the more that I worked on the dialogues, the more I appreciate the fact that there is this Sphinx. Nietzsche calls Plato a Sphinx, or he calls him a chimera, an enigma of sorts. So if you pressed me and I had to pick something that bothers me, I would say that the insistence that we can get to Plato's position, a theory or a concept that Plato believes is absolutely so, that he endorses, that's what bothers me. But that's not him. That's history of interpretation. So I guess nothing. That's not good. That's never good. Yeah.
I'm sure there are many grad students in philosophy at Boston College.
Mm-hmm.
Have any of them traveled the same path?
I think mine is really extraordinary, although there's a woman, a colleague, I think she came in 2 years after me. Her name is Melissa. And Melissa did her master's in marketing, I want to say. And then she was working in the field, and in a similar manner, she realized that this is not exactly completely fulfilling. This is not perhaps going to work out for the rest of my life, speaking for Melissa now. And she applied for a master's in philosophy at Loyola Marymount, and then got accepted at Boston College. And very successful as a graduate student right now. Melissa is thinking of ways to reposition education, the way that philosophy is being taught at introductory levels, so perhaps in high schools or in underprivileged communities. She's kind of a trailblazer. She's making her own way. She's in contact with a professor somewhere in Texas who established this group of scholars who teach philosophy to kids in underprivileged areas, or not underprivileged, but at entry level in high schools. And so Melissa is positioning herself that way. She's interested in education and what philosophy can do for younger generations. And that I think that's great. And so the reason why I'm going to do this kind of detail, Melissa Fitzpatrick, is because I don't see that kind of, creativity necessarily in everyone who just went immediately from an undergraduate to a master's and then to a PhD. So having had that different angle, I think helps to see how what one studies now can be applied in other ways. Sure.
Let me ask you to talk about one other thing.
Uh-huh.
And just specifically now, especially since another member, Susie came in. And Susie is writing her honors thesis on justice and judgment in Aeschylus's or style. So here you are writing your dissertation on Plato, Socrates, and Aristophanes.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it about the Greek world that attracted you? I mean, someone might have thought, for example, you would have written a dissertation, say, that included Dostoevsky.
Another one of Stuart's leitmotifs. He's been saying that if I don't write on Dostoevsky, my philosophical career is wasted. I mean, it's right at some point in my life. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, what is it about
Ancient Greek, sure.
Well, not just
world.
but you're writing on a tragedian, a comedian who wouldn't normally be thought of as being philosophers.
Right.
Yet the dissertation, a philosophical study of tyranny in Plato, Sophocles, and Aristophanes.
I guess there's a couple of ways in which you can respond to this question. Maybe I'll hold on to two of them for now. One of them is historical, and another one has something to do with my response to the first question from Lucas, which is this coincidence of theory and practice. We often think about philosophy as fairly rigorous, which it is, fairly dry, which it doesn't have to be, but theoretical engagement, investigation that is several degrees removed from the nitty-gritty actuality or events of life. Drama, from ancient Greek dramata, deeds, actions, that which is being done. Usually this nitty-gritty, that which is happening, which is being done in life, is excised, cut out, and set aside in favor of theoretically rigorous philosophical pursuit. And in the dissertation, in the introduction from the get-go, I'm making an argument that to understand what's going on in a Platonic dialogue, you have got to bring the two together. The practical and the theoretical in Plato are inseparable. He himself, Plato that is, as he is writing these dialogues, is drawing on the sophists. So often you hear this, Plato is disagreeing with the sophist. Plato is attacking the sophist. Well, first of all, not. His characters are fine, he's the writer. But he is drawing. Plato is using in his writing sophistical techniques. Plato is using in his writing excerpts, lines from tragedies. Plato is using in his writing not only lines from comedies, ancient Greek comedy, but also comedic scenes. Aristophanes appears, comedy appears in the dialogues. So poetry, poesis, in ancient Greek, again, is enlivening Platonic dialogues. In other words, whatever theoretical, rigorous thinking we suppose that we can do when we're engaging with the Platonic dialogue or with Plato's dialogue, we can't get there unless we take into the consideration the fact Plato is drawing on the nitty-gritty dramatic tradition, on the actions of life. And the reason why I'm calling dramatic tradition in ancient Greece the nitty-gritty actions of life is because that's simply historically the case. On stage, Sophocles would be giving us his Oedipus, which, by the way, I found out in my research that it's not Oedipus Tyrannos. That's the Tyrannos, translated into Rex into Latin and then king in English, is a later edition that was added in the Alexandrian library, I guess just for the sake of indexing the works, so it's easier to differentiate between them. But Oedipus, as it appears in the Athenian stage during the Dionysian festival, I'm fairly certain that it is immediately in performance, for one of the first performances, immediately after the plague, which took out something like 40% of the population in Athens, and they were just about to go into the second devastating stage of the Peloponnesian War. So the nitty-gritty of life for Greeks is on stage. So this theorein, which I kept on stressing at the beginning, seeing sights, seeing things being performed, and theorizing, theoretical work for the Greeks is inseparable, at least as far as Platonic writing is concerned. So that'll be the historical element of it. And same holds true for comedy. Plato, as far as I'm concerned, in his writing is responding to a lot of what Aristophanes is doing. They are, literally, in dialogue. Not to say nothing of pre-Socratic thinkers that are also engaged with by Plato. But one more thing on tyranny and why tragedy and comedy thereof, especially why comedy. Because when we think about how it is that tyrannical characters present themselves to us, one of the things that tyrannical individuals seem to not be able to withstand, let alone do on their own, is be ridiculed. Mm-hmm. So comedy's humor's capacity to penetrate through the tyrannical veneer, through this presentation of gravity and seriousness. Once comedy has poked some holes in this veneer, to use a turn of phrase, it looks like the one thing we can point to that is grave about tyranny is its monstrosity, rather than something seriously good for human life. Yeah? So this capacity of comedy to open a space for us where we can be comfortable, at least to some extent, with other people's and our own, hopefully, shortcomings, to laugh at ourselves, in my understanding, means to come closer to a serious understanding of ourselves and also, by extension, of other human beings, of the world we live in, and surely of tyrannical characters. Because it's often too late by the time that we realize what happens. Oh, okay, fine. Now the tyrant is in power. I don't want to end like this. We can't end like this.
Maybe I can ask you to talk about the first paper.
Oh dear,
That
that's not fair.
you wrote.
You can talk about it. Tolstoy style sentences.
No. The first paper you wrote at Roosevelt University.
The first paper, I think, was for Adam Heidenreich's class. Don't ask me why, but I remember that last name and that name. I'm not sure if he's still teaching. And it was an excursus, and probably some reflection on my experiences. I'm vaguely remembering this. I was writing a lot about windows. And what that had to do with moving from Estonia to America. I don't think I can really pull that up now.
Do you remember the first paper you wrote for liberal studies?
I'm sorry, the one after I came into during your office hours and then I cried afterwards?
Tell a story.
I just said it on a sad note, but all right. The paper was on the winter sail, possibly. Maybe that was a better one. Or maybe I was writing on Socrates' apology. God, apology of Socrates, was that it? I repressed that for good reason. All right. And I wrote it out.
So one of Plato's dialogue.
I'm sorry, apologia, indeed, defense, which actually is not apology, it's from ancient Greek again, it's a defense speech, you speak in your own defense. So Apology of Socrates by Plato, and I thought I was doing a marvelous job. I wrote it out in Russian, and then translated into English, and that didn't work at all. I was talking about some kind of Socrates, I remember images. Socrates was on a raft of life, he was in a boat. Yeah, traveling the seas, traversing. I'm not sure what the point was exactly. It was more of a creative piece, translated from Russian into English. Long story short, during office hours, after I received something, it wasn't a passing grade. I think you just told me that it was not going to go well if I submitted it. So we hung out for a little while, and Stuart told me everything he thought about the paper. And I cried. Yeah, I didn't cry much during my academic experiences. But Stuart didn't just leave me hanging. he suggested that I stop writing in Russian and then translating into English, but do my best to write in English immediately. But that's not something that is easy to do, especially when you're trying to figure out how to have these scholarships come through, and the job that you're doing, and then also academic engagements. Like how many things can I do at once, Stuart? What are you asking of me to write in English? But I did. And it was good pressure, and little by little. And again, with many conversations later about the paper, something came of it. Did it? What
That
came of
paper?
it?
No,
Nothing
nothing
came of
came
it.
of that.
Well, there were many others.
Many others. But your comments here touch on Lucas's first question about, I think, the importance of doing something foreign. Because here at Roosevelt, your first intellectual engagements in thinking and analyzing and writing were all done in a foreign language in your head. And you had to recognize that and move out of it. Do you think that had any influence on you in your philosophical frame of reference, outlook on the world?
It would have to. I mean, I wonder if what I'm doing now with ancient Greek language, which I will never really master that, nobody really. Maybe some wonderful classicists like Bernardetti master ancient Greek language. But I wonder if one of the reasons why I decided to, yeah, sure, not write on Dostoevsky, not in language that would be very comfortable with Russian, but ancient Greek is because it does, in fact, push you quite literally into a different way of relating to not just the text, but your own thinking. Metaphor, sentence structure, all of that. I'm thinking of a movie, I believe it's called The Arrival, Just Arrival. Have you seen it? Arrival? No? It's a good film. No, yes, okay. It's a film about aliens coming here to visit us, and they really want us all to cooperate in different countries. How many other? 11 or 8? I forget. 12 maybe? 12. I don't
I mean,
know.
different pods.
That's right.
Yeah, around 11 or 12.
11, yeah. And so China, of course, going aggressive. Russia is following China, all this global conflict. But the point about language in the movie is that these aliens have, and this is the point about translation, a tool for us or a weapon, depending on how it is that we understand what it is that aliens want us to receive from them. And this weapon or tool or gift is language. And the film simply says that if you learn this language truly well enough, you will be able to perceive time differently. Now, I'm not saying that when I learned English well enough, I began perceiving time differently. I think I'm still past, present, future. That still works. I think. But yes, the association or the relationship that you have with not just people who speak a foreign language, but the text, and with your understanding of the text when it's in a foreign tongue. I mean, I'm thinking now, Russian all of a sudden comes back, and the words that I thought nothing of, don't ask me for examples now, it never works that way, right? When you need one, it's never there. All of a sudden, I see their roots, I see how things are connected conceptually, how the word could have come out, the way that what it signifies. It's yeah, that foreignness, linguistic foreignness is important, sure.
What are your plans after you finish your PhD?
Am I going to turn all the way around again? This time I'll just go with the aliens. No, well, I'm applying for a few things, sure, yeah. Postdoctoral fellowships, teaching positions. I intend to at least try and stay in the academe. That would be good. Yeah. I would like to continue teaching. That's been a world-changing experience. It was something I did not anticipate how difficult and yet how amazing it would be. Yeah.
In like terms of pedagogy, or like in the classes you have been able to teach, what about philosophy has helped you with that? Or
What about philosophy?
yeah,
I'm sorry, what? I didn't
what
hear that.
about philosophy has influenced your
In my pedagogy,
Yeah.
ways of teaching. Sure. So again, not always, but often for me comes down to the question of positioning yourself such that you begin to not simply appreciate, but genuinely relate to the viewpoint, understanding of another person. So the way I was saying, students helped me see myself through their eyes. I attempt, because of my philosophical training, I think, but also international experiences, I try as much as I can to see the world or see the problem that we were discussing in philosophy class through the eyes of my students or a particular individual from their personal lens, as much as that, as far as that is possible. The particular way in which I work on philosophy, Plato's dialogues, and the dramatic works that I engage have influenced my pedagogy quite directly. And here's one example. I ask my students to act in class. So for example, we usually move from that which is more readily accessible, what is more familiar, as I call it, to what is more foreign. And that's not me, that's Aristotle. However, it's still the line. So we go from film, in an introduction to philosophy class, from film to literature that would be like a play, for example, or more literary account, and then to the same concept or the same problem, but in strictly philosophical literature. And so with films and with plays, I ask my students to not only act particular scenes out, but to rewrite them. So I really do play around with that language or understanding angle where you have to take the material, be it sophistry or be it a question of justice, and really explain to yourself first what it means to you and how it relates to the text that you're studying, and then put on an act, short, 4 to 5 minutes. But the way that I work, again, on Plato's dialogues, and I try to seek out their dramatic elements, translates into how I teach. And it's quite successful. Of course, there's students who are, why are you doing this to us at the beginning of the semester? There's a lot of angst, and why do we have to stand up and present things in front of our peers? But I hold meetings with my students at the beginning of the semester and throughout the term, and we sit down and we talk things out, and eventually in evaluations, at least, and in personal comments too, in conversation, I hear that it's fun for them to do that, and to get together and then to present material in a way that they understand, they can relate to. Then to unfold through that understanding that is their own, through that understanding to unfold a more difficult theoretical point. Yeah. Thank you.
I get the sense that you came to philosophy through your love of reading.
Yeah.
And you were reading Russians. And I'm curious as to your favorite Russian author.
I knew this question would come up, and my answer immediately is, that's not fair. Like, what do you like better, to drink water or to breathe? I don't know. I kind of need both. It's tough, really. So it depends on what it is that I'm attempting to understand at this particular time in life, or my academic career, for study of psychology, especially dark human psychology, you have to go to Dostoevsky. For studies that are larger than life, Melville-like presentations of the world, you have to go to Tolstoy. For thinking about this carnivalesque, and yet very well executed account of the immediacy of life and its strange, even awkward at times, truthfulness that's unaccountable. You have to go to Chekhov and his plays. Bulgakov, Master and Margarita, one of my favorite works. I don't think I will ever grow out of that, and I don't want to, as a matter of fact. It's just the purchase into understanding that work is, of course, knowing something about Soviet background and things of that nature. But that's not the only theme at all. The fact that in the novel, immediately, a poet, someone who dares to think and speak otherwise, is being presented as an insane person, locked away in an insane asylum, says something about the world that Bulgakov is describing. So it depends on what it is that what draws me at the time, or what it is that I'm academically engaged with, what I'm trying to figure out. Liskov's novels.
maybe we should thank her.
All right, it's getting ready. Thank you very much.
And thank you all for coming. And if you're interested, we have another event on Monday, 4:30 in this room on the Coen Brothers movie Miller's Crossing.